I'm Rebecca Taylor, 31 years old, and I'm staring at the final notice from my attorney, confirming my legal name change is complete. 3 months ago, I sat at my parents' dining table as a family dinner erupted into chaos and tears. Since that night, I haven't answered a single call from anyone who shares my blood. As I finger the keys to my new apartment, I feel both grief and relief wash over me. When my sister demanded $15,000 and my mother told me to pay up or lose my family, they never expected I would choose myself. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories about setting boundaries and finding your worth. Trust me, if you've ever been treated like a family ATM, you'll want to hear what happened next. Growing up in suburban Boston in the early 2000s, my family appeared perfectly normal from the outside. My father, William, worked as an accountant. My mother, Kathleen, taught third grade, and we lived in a comfortable colonial with a well-tended garden. But appearances, as they often do, concealed complex truths beneath the surface. From my earliest memories, there was a stark difference in how my sister Amanda and I were treated. 3 years younger than me, Amanda possessed a natural charm and social magnetism I never had. While I was bookish and serious, Amanda could light up a room with her personality. This dynamic might have been harmless if not for how it shaped our family's expectations. When I was 7, I received a $10 allowance with the requirement that $5 go to savings. Meanwhile, Amanda received the same allowance with no savings requirement. Mom would say Rebecca is naturally responsible with money. Amanda needs more guidance. This seemingly small difference established a pattern that would define our relationship with money and family for decades to come. By high school, the disparity became more pronounced. When I wanted to attend a summer science program that cost $500, Mom and Dad told me I'd need to earn half myself. I spent weekends babysitting and mowing lawns to make it happen. The following year, when Amanda wanted a $700 cheerleading camp experience, they paid in full without hesitation. Your sister needs the confidence boost, Mom explained when I questioned the different treatment. At 16, I got my first official job at the local grocery store. While my friends spent their earnings on clothes and movies, I saved methodically for college, knowing that my academic scholarships wouldn't cover everything. Meanwhile, Amanda cycled through part-time jobs rarely lasting more than a few weeks at each. When she wanted a car for her 17th birthday, our parents provided a newer model than the used sedan I had purchased with my own savings. College amplified these differences. I attended State University on a partial scholarship, working 20 hours weekly at the campus bookstore to avoid student loans. Amanda started at an expensive private college, dropped out after one semester, tried community college, dropped out again, and finally completed a beauty certification program, all funded by our parents. When I graduated with honors and no debt, Mom proudly told relatives, "Rebecca has always been so independent, as if my financial discipline had materialized from thin air rather than necessity." After college, I secured an entry-level position at a financial services firm. The pay was modest, but the potential for advancement was clear. I shared a cramped apartment with 2 roommates, brought lunch from home, and meticulously budgeted every dollar. During those same years, Amanda lived in our parents' renovated basement, cycling through jobs at salons and boutiques, frequently calling in sick when she wasn't feeling it. When she totaled her car after texting while driving, our parents replaced it without question. Dad occasionally expressed concern about these patterns, but Mom's response was always the same. Amanda just hasn't found her path yet. We need to support her until she does. And so the cycle continued, with Amanda making increasingly costly mistakes and my parents, particularly Mom, rushing to fix them. 7 years into my finance career, my hard work paid off. After navigating the challenging aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis and proving my value repeatedly, I earned a significant promotion to senior financial advisor. The position came with nearly double my previous salary, a fact I shared privately with my parents over dinner one weekend. "That's wonderful, honey," Dad said, with genuine pride, while Mom's congratulations seemed perfunctory, before quickly changing the subject to Amanda's latest idea, opening a small clothing boutique that had real potential. What I didn't know then was that Amanda had racked up nearly $20 0 credit card debt, maxing out multiple cards, and even opening one in our grandmother Helen's name. My promotion news had triggered something in my mother, who immediately saw my success as the solution to Amanda's problems. The week after my promotion announcement, Mom began calling more frequently, asking subtle questions about my new salary benefits package and whether I was finally going to buy a nicer car or maybe a condo. I answered vaguely uncomfortable, with the sudden interest in my finances, but not yet understanding the agenda behind it. A seed of unease had been planted, one that would soon grow into the confrontation that would change everything. Late March in New England still carries winter's chill, and I remember tightening my scarf as I walked up the familiar path to my parents' front door for our monthly family dinner. These gatherings had become a tradition after I moved into my own apartment, a way to maintain family connections despite our busy lives. Usually they were predictable affairs, Dad grilling, regardless of the weather, Mom fussing over side dishes, and Amanda arriving late with stories of whatever drama currently dominated her life. That night seemed no different at first. Dad proudly served his famous steaks. Mom had prepared too many sides, and Amanda breezed in 20 minutes late wearing an outfit that still had price tags partially hidden under the collar, a habit she'd had since high school when she would wear clothes and return them. "Sorry, I'm late," she announced, kissing our parents' cheeks. I was finalizing some business details. "Business details?" I asked, genuinely curious. Amanda's employment history resembled a patchwork quilt of short-lived enthusiasms. Last I'd heard, she was working part-time at a makeup counter. "I'm opening my own boutique fitness studio," she announced, with the same confidence she'd displayed when declaring her previous passions for photography, fashion blogging, and artisanal soap making. "That sounds exciting," I said carefully, cutting into my steak. "What type of fitness?" "It's a fusion concept," Amanda explained, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Part spin, part bar, part mindfulness. There's nothing like it in the area." Dad looked impressed. "You've always been good at physical activities. Remember when you were the youngest in your dance class to get on point?" "I do," Mom beamed. "You were so naturally gifted." As dinner progressed, Amanda elaborated on her vision, luxury amenities, high-end clientele-branded merchandise, while our parents nodded encouragingly. I asked practical questions about business plans, market research, and startup costs, which Amanda answered vaguely. "Actually," she said during dessert, setting down her fork and looking directly at me, "that's something I wanted to talk to you about. I need investors to get this off the ground properly." The table fell silent as everyone looked at me. I felt a familiar tightness in my stomach, the same sensation I'd experienced countless times when family expectations collided with my boundaries. "I was hoping you could invest $15,000, Amanda continued. "With your promotion and everything, it would be a great opportunity for both of us." I carefully placed my napkin beside my plate. "That's a significant amount. What kind of business plan do you have? Have you done market research on the area?" Amanda's expression flickered between annoyance and persuasion. "I don't need all the formal paperwork. I know this area and what people want. The thing is," she continued, leaning forward, "I've already signed a lease on the perfect space, and I've put deposits down on some equipment. I just need this last bit to make it happen." You've already signed a lease. I couldn't hide my surprise. Without secured funding, sometimes you have to take risks to make dreams happen. Mom interjected, her tone carrying a slight edge. Not everything in life can be planned with spreadsheets, Rebecca. I understand taking risks, I countered, but business loans typically require— This isn't a bank transaction, Amanda interrupted. This is family. You've always been the financially secure one. And now that you've got this big promotion— Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat but remained silent, his eyes fixed on his coffee cup. I'd like to think about it, I said finally. This is a lot to process during dinner. Amanda's face fell instantly. I need to give the equipment company an answer by next week. If I lose the equipment, I lose the special pricing. You've never supported my dreams, she added, her voice rising slightly. You've always been so judgmental about my choices. That's not fair, I replied, feeling heat rise to my face. I've supported you in many ways. Girl's dad attempted to intervene, but Mom cut him off. Rebecca, your sister is trying to build something of her own. After all we've done to support you through your career, is it too much to ask that you help your sister now that you're successful? The implication that my success had been primarily due to their support rather than my own hard work stung sharply. The dinner ended awkwardly, with Amanda barely speaking to me and Mom making pointed remarks about family loyalty. As I drove home, my phone began buzzing with text messages from Amanda. Thanks for embarrassing me in front of Mom and Dad. I thought you'd be happy for me for once. I guess your big salary makes you think you're better than everyone else. If you really loved me, you wouldn't hesitate. Each message twisted the knot in my stomach tighter. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt the familiar guilt that had shadowed so many of my interactions with my family. But alongside it was something else, a growing certainty that something was fundamentally wrong with what had just transpired. The week following that fateful dinner became a blur of increasingly uncomfortable phone calls. Mom called daily, her approach alternating between guilt-inducing reminiscence. Remember how we helped with your college applications, and thinly veiled criticism. Some people value family above money. Each conversation left me feeling more destabilized, questioning whether my reluctance to hand over $15,000 with no strings attached actually did make me the selfish person they were portraying me to be. During lunch breaks at work, I researched the boutique fitness market in our area. What I found didn't inspire confidence. 3 similar studios had opened and closed within the past 18 months, and 2 established national chains had recently expanded into nearby locations. The market was saturated with high overhead costs and fierce competition for a limited client base. I approached Jason, a colleague who specialized in small business finance, for advice, without mentioning that the business in question was my sister's. Honestly, he said, reviewing the general area demographics I'd provided, it's a challenging market right now. Boutique fitness has a high failure rate, even in ideal conditions. Without significant experience in the industry or a truly unique value proposition, I'd approach with extreme caution. Armed with this information, I suggested meeting Amanda for coffee to discuss her business more thoroughly. She arrived at the cafe 40 minutes late, already defensive. I don't need another lecture about business plans, she said before I'd even broached the subject. I'm just trying to understand your vision better, I explained. If I'm going to invest, I should know what I'm investing in. Invest, Amanda scoffed. It's not like you're some venture capitalist. You're my sister. This is about supporting family. Despite her resistance, I managed to ask some basic questions about her business model, projected expenses, and marketing strategy. Her answers revealed alarming gaps she hadn't researched. Local competition had no pricing strategy beyond charging what feels right for luxury, and had already committed to $30 0 inches equipment purchases on credit cards. on top of previous debt I hadn't known about. Look, I said carefully, I think there's a middle ground here. What if I helped you develop a solid business plan? Or I could offer a smaller loan with clear repayment terms. Amanda's face flushed red. So you'll only help if you can control everything. God, you think you're so much better than everyone just because you work in finance. Not everyone wants to live your boring, safe little life. She stormed out of the cafe, leaving her untouched latte behind. 20 minutes later, Mom called. We're having an emergency family meeting tomorrow night. Your father and I expect you to be there. Her tone left no room for negotiation, so the following evening I found myself back at my parents' house. What I hadn't expected was the presence of extended family. My grandmother, Helen, Aunt Susan, and cousin Lauren were all seated in the living room when I arrived. What's going on? I asked, immediately uncomfortable with the ambush-like setup. We're here because we're concerned. Mom began using her elementary school teacher voice. Your sister has a wonderful opportunity, and you're standing in her way. What followed was a surreal intervention, not for Amanda's financial irresponsibility, but for my apparent selfishness. One by one, family members took turns explaining why I should help Amanda. When you girls were little, you always shared everything, Grandma Helen said, though my memories of childhood told a very different story. Family businesses are how generational wealth is built, added Aunt Susan, conveniently ignoring that Amanda's track record suggested her studio would be neither family-run nor wealth-generating. Cousin Lauren, who had borrowed and never repaid $200 from me 3 years earlier, chimed in, "It's just money, Rebecca. You can always earn more." Throughout the ambush, Amanda sat silently, occasionally dabbing at non-existent tears, while Dad looked increasingly uncomfortable but offered no support. When everyone had spoken, Mom delivered the final blow. If you can't help your sister now, you're not the daughter I raised. I'm disappointed in the person you've become. The words hit like physical blows. I looked around the room at these people who supposedly loved me but seemed incapable of seeing the fundamental unfairness of the situation. I need some air, I managed to say, walking out to the back porch. Through the window, I could hear them consoling Amanda over my selfishness. Standing alone in the cool night air, I felt something shift inside me, the first tremor in what would become an earthquake that would reshape my life entirely. 3 days after the family intervention, I was at work reviewing client portfolios when my phone buzzed with an automated security alert, new login to your personal email from unrecognized device. The location data showed it had been accessed from my parents' home in Boston. My immediate thought was that it must be a mistake, but something made me check my account activity logs. There, it was multiple logins over the past week, all from my parents' IP address, accessing not just email, but also saved documents, including financial statements and the spreadsheet where I tracked my budget and investments. I felt physically ill. Someone and I had a sinking feeling I knew who had accessed my most private financial information without permission. With shaking hands, I called Amanda, directly skipping the usual text message precursor. "Did you access my email and financial records?" I asked when she answered, not bothering with pleasantries. A pause, then I needed to understand what we're working with for the studio. We. There is no we in this situation, Amanda. You broke into my private accounts. I didn't break in, she countered defensively. I used the password recovery questions. It's not my fault you still use Fluffy's name and your elementary school for security answers. Fluffy was our childhood cat. The violation felt even worse knowing she had deliberately exploited our shared history to invade my privacy. What exactly did you look at, and who have you told? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Just your recent bank statements and investment summary, she replied, as if this were a minor indiscretion. And I only told Mom and Dad. They needed to see that you have plenty of money to help me, but are choosing not to. I ended the call and immediately began changing every password and security question on my accounts. As I worked, my phone lit up with a call from my mother. "Amanda told me you're upset," she began without preamble. "I think you're overreacting. We needed to know what you could afford. Families shouldn't have secrets about these things." "Mom, she accessed my private accounts without permission. That's not okay." "Oh, please, Rebecca. It's not like she stole anything. She's your sister. Why are you being so dramatic?" The conversation continued in this vein, with my mother minimizing the violation while simultaneously justifying it. When I finally hung up, I felt a strange numbness spreading through me. At work, my colleague Megan noticed my distraction. We weren't particularly close, but she had always been kind. "Are you okay?" she asked, stopping by my desk. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Something about her genuine concern cracked my careful composure. "Family stuff," I managed to say before tears threatened. "I've got time over lunch if you need an ear," she offered simply. That lunch with Megan became the first time I'd ever openly discussed my family dynamics with anyone outside the situation. As I spoke, her expression shifted from surprise to concern. "Rebecca, what you're describing isn't normal," she said gently. "Accessing your financial records without permission is a serious violation." "But they're family," I echoed the justification I'd heard so often. "Family should respect boundaries even more, not less," Megan replied. That evening, I called Daniel, my childhood best friend who had moved to Chicago after college. We'd remained close, talking monthly despite the distance. Unlike Megan, Daniel had witnessed some of the dynamics firsthand during our growing up years. "I've always thought your family treated you unfairly," he admitted, after I recounted recent events. "But this crosses a major line. You know that, right?" His validation was both comforting and disturbing confirmation that my growing unease was justified, but also that the situation was even more dysfunctional than I'd allowed myself to acknowledge. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing between anger, hurt, and confusion. The next morning, I received a call from my father, the first time he'd contacted me directly about the situation. "Your mother doesn't know I'm calling," he began, his voice quiet. "I want you to know that I think Amanda was wrong to access your accounts." A spark of hope flared. Finally, an ally. "Thanks, Dad. I appreciate that." But he continued, and my hope dimmed. "I think the best way forward is for you to help your sister this one time, for the sake of family peace. Your mother is very upset, and you know how Amanda gets when she doesn't get her way. So I should reward their behavior by giving in." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "I'm not saying it's right," he sighed. "I'm just asking you to consider the bigger picture. Family is all we have in the end." After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen counter and opened my laptop. Instead of working, I found myself searching terms like family financial abuse and toxic family dynamics. What I read felt like someone had been observing my life and documenting it in clinical terms. The patterns were so clear when laid out by objective sources: the golden child divided by scapegoat dynamic, financial exploitation, emotional manipulation. For the first time, I began to see my situation not as a unique family quirk, but as a recognized pattern of dysfunction that others had experienced and documented. The realization was both devastating and strangely liberating. As April bloomed across Boston, a different kind of growth spread through my life. A malignant campaign that began on social media and quickly infected every aspect of my relationships. It started with Amanda's vague posting. "Some people think money is more important than family. Sad to discover who really has your back." The post received dozens of sympathetic comments, including several from extended family members, who clearly knew exactly who she was referring to. Within days, distant relatives I barely spoke to began sending messages. "Family should always come first, Rebecca. Your sister is really hurting right now. I never thought you'd be the type to abandon family." Each message felt like a small dagger precisely aimed at my deepest insecurities. Had I really become cold and selfish? Was my refusal to hand over money without conditions truly a moral failing? The campaign soon expanded beyond family. One Tuesday evening, I arrived at the church community center, where I'd volunteered weekly for the past 3 years, helping with the financial literacy program for teens. Martha, the coordinator I'd worked closely with, greeted me with unusual coolness. "Rebecca, do you have a moment before class?" In her office, Martha's expression was a mixture of disappointment and discomfort. "Several parents have expressed concern about you continuing as an instructor," she explained. "Given the circumstances." "What circumstances?" I asked, genuinely confused. Martha looked surprised. "Your sister mentioned you refused to help with her medical treatments. People are concerned about someone teaching financial responsibility who makes those kinds of choices." The shock left me momentarily speechless. "Medical treatments, Amanda isn't ill. She asked me for money for a business venture." Martha's confusion mirrored my own. "That's not what she told the prayer group. She said she needed treatment for a condition she didn't want made public, and you refused to help despite having the means." The deliberate lie stunned me. This wasn't just Amanda being impulsive or entitled, this was calculated character assassination. That weekend, my cousin Lauren's birthday party became the stage for the next escalation. I'd considered not attending, but some stubborn part of me refused to be driven from family spaces. I maintained a low profile until Amanda arrived, making a dramatic entrance an hour late. She circled the room receiving hugs and well wishes before spotting me by the punch bowl. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she changed course to approach me. "I'm surprised you showed up," she said, voice just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I thought family gatherings weren't important to you anymore." "Amanda, this isn't the place," I said quietly. "When is the place, Rebecca? You won't answer my calls. You won't help when I'm in need. What kind of sister does that make you?" Her voice had risen, drawing attention from other guests. My Aunt Susan approached looking concerned. "Everything okay over here, girls?" "Ask Rebecca if everything's okay," Amanda replied, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "Ask her if she sleeps well, knowing she could help her only sister but chooses not to." The room had grown quieter, attention shifting to our corner. I felt dozens of eyes on me, judging without context. "I'm not doing this here," I said firmly, setting down my cup. "I'm sorry, Lauren," I added, catching my cousin's eye across the room before heading for the door. In the driveway, my grandmother Helen caught up to me, her hand gently catching my elbow. "Rebecca, wait." I turned, expecting another lecture about family obligation. Instead, her face showed genuine concern. "You're breaking your mother's heart," she said softly. "Whatever this disagreement is, surely it's not worth the pain it's causing." "Grandma, it's not that simple." "Family is always simple," she insisted. "You love them, you forgive them, you help when they need it. That's what we do." Looking at her weathered face, I realized she truly believed what she was saying. To her generation, family loyalty trumped all other considerations, including one's own well-being. "I love you, Grandma," I said, kissing her cheek before getting into my car. Sitting in the driveway, I broke down, completely sobbing until my throat hurt and my eyes burned. When the tears finally subsided, I called Daniel. "I don't know how much more of this I can take," I admitted after recounting the party disaster. "Beck," he said, using his childhood nickname for me, "I think you need to consider whether maintaining these relationships is worth the cost to your mental health." "They're my family," I said automatically. "Yes, and they're treating you terribly," he replied. "Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is step back from people who hurt you, even if those people are family, especially if they're family." Our conversation continued for over an hour, Daniel gently helping me see that what I was experiencing wasn't normal family conflict, but a coordinated campaign of emotional manipulation. The next morning, I received an unexpected email from Tom, Amanda's boyfriend of 8 months. The subject line read simply, "You should know. Rebecca, I don't know you well, but I feel you deserve the truth. Amanda doesn't need the money for a fitness studio. She has gambling debts, serious ones. She's been going to Foxwoods almost weekly for the past year. The business is partly a cover story, partly a genuine delusion that she can fix everything with one successful venture. I've tried to get her to seek help, but she refuses. I'm sorry you've been put in the middle of this. Tom, the revelation hit like a thunderbolt. I spent that evening conducting my own investigation, reviewing social media posts where Amanda had checked in at locations near the casino, cross-referencing dates with her financial emergencies. The pattern was undeniable. The business wasn't just a poor investment risk. It was likely a complete fabrication designed to cover a serious addiction. This discovery shifted my understanding of the situation dramatically. My sister needed professional help, not an enabler. And my parents, whether knowingly or not, were deepening her problem by shielding her from consequences. For the first time, I saw my refusal to provide money not as withholding help, but as potentially the only truly helpful stance anyone had taken. On a rainy Tuesday in early May, my workday was interrupted by a call from an unfamiliar number. The professional voice on the other end identified herself as Diane from Boston Trust Bank. Miss Taylor, we're calling to verify some information on your loan application. I haven't applied for any loan, I replied, immediately alert. A pause. We have an application submitted yesterday for a personal loan of $20, 0 inches your name, using your social security number and address. My stomach dropped. That's not me. I didn't apply for any loan. What followed was a frightening glimpse into just how vulnerable our financial identities can be. Someone and I had no doubt who had attempted to take out a substantial personal loan in my name. The bank representative walked me through the application details, confirming my suspicions the applicant had accurate information about my employment income and even my mother's maiden name. You'll want to place a fraud alert on your credit immediately, Diane advised, and file a police report. By that afternoon, I had contacted all 3 credit bureaus, filed a police report online, and discovered 7 credit inquiries on my report. From the past week alone, attempts at various banks and credit cards that had been declined, but damaged my credit score. I hired a digital forensics specialist who confirmed my worst fears: the breach had originated from devices that had accessed my parents' home Wi-Fi. The specialist explained that whoever had done this had used information that would be known to family members. My first pet's name, childhood addresses, my mother's maiden name to bypass security measures. As I was processing this information, my phone rang. It was my mother. Rebecca, you need to drop this police report nonsense immediately, she demanded, without greeting. Amanda made a mistake, but prison would ruin her life. She committed identity theft, Mom. That's a felony. It was a misunderstanding. She thought you had agreed to help her, but were being slow about it. She was just trying to speed things up. The blatant rewriting of reality left me speechless. In what universe could identity theft be classified as speeding things up? Mom, she tried to steal $20,000 from me. This isn't a misunderstanding. Family doesn't call the police on family, she insisted. If you go through with this, you'll never be welcome in my house again. The threat hung between us heavy and final. For the first time, I didn't feel the automatic guilt or need to appease. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said quietly before ending the call. The next day brought a new complication. I was called into a meeting with HR and the head of security at my firm. As a financial advisor handling sensitive client information, any personal financial irregularities raised red flags. We've been notified of unusual activity involving your personal accounts, the security director explained. Given your access to client data, we need to understand what's happening. I explained the situation as professionally as possible. The identity theft attempt, the police report, the forensic evidence pointing to a family member. While they were sympathetic, the implications for my career were serious. Until this situation is resolved, we'll need to temporarily restrict your access to certain client systems, the HR director explained. It's standard protocol in cases of potential financial vulnerability. The restriction meant I couldn't perform key aspects of my job. The promotion I'd worked so hard for was effectively on hold. That evening, I received a surprising call from my father. His voice sounded different, stronger than in our previous conversations. "I confronted your mother and Amanda today," he said without preamble. What Amanda did with the loan applications that crossed a line I can't ignore. For the first time in my life, I heard my father taking a firm stand against the dynamic that had defined our family for decades. "Your mother and I argued," he continued. "She still thinks you should drop the police report and fix things within the family. I told her that Amanda needs to face real consequences this time." His support, though late, meant more than I could express. "Thank you, Dad." "I'm sorry, Rebecca," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I should have stepped in years ago. I thought I was keeping peace, but I was just enabling behavior that's hurt both my daughters, Amanda, by never learning responsibility, and you by being treated unfairly." After we hung up, I received a text from my Aunt Susan asking to meet privately for coffee. Curious and cautious, I agreed. At the cafe the next day, Susan looked nervously over her shoulder before speaking. "I need to tell you something," she said in a low voice. "Amanda has done this before." "Done what?" "Taken money from family members. Last year, she borrowed $5,000 from me for emergency dental surgery, but was posting vacation photos from Miami that same week. Your cousin Lauren lost $2,000 to a business opportunity Amanda was supposedly organizing. The revelation that Amanda had a pattern of financial exploitation beyond just our immediate family was both validating and deeply disturbing. "Why is everyone still enabling her?" I asked. Susan looked down at her coffee. "Your mother. She defends Amanda fiercely, cuts off anyone who won't support her. Most of the family finds it easier to give in than fight." That evening, I had my first appointment with a therapist, Dr. Mitchell, who specialized in family trauma. As I recounted my family history, she took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "What you're describing has elements of financial abuse and something called family scapegoating," she explained. "The patterns are deeply entrenched, which makes them difficult but not impossible to address." "How do I fix my family?" I asked. Her response was gentle but direct. "You can't fix your family's dynamics alone. Each person would need to recognize the problem and commit to changing. What you can control is how you respond and what boundaries you set to protect yourself." With my sister facing potential criminal charges, my mother threatening permanent estrangement, my promotion in jeopardy, and my credit score damaged, those boundaries would need to be substantial. The first week of June brought my first major holiday alone. Mother's Day had always been a significant celebration in our family, with brunch at my parents' house, followed by gifts and reminiscing. This year, I sent a card but declined the invitation, unable to face the tension and manipulation that would inevitably occur. Instead, I spent the day with Megan and her mother, who had kindly included me in their plans when she heard about my situation. Their easy, respectful relationship was both heartwarming and painful to witness a glimpse of what healthy family dynamics could look like. That evening, I returned home to find a small package leaning against my apartment door. It contained no note, but inside were photographs and mementos from my childhood that I'd thought lost years ago. My debate team medaled the program, from my first piano recital, a Father's Day card I'd made in second grade. I never discovered who left the package, perhaps my father or even my grandmother, but the gesture felt like a small acknowledgement of my existence and worth outside the narrow role I'd been assigned in my family system. The next day, stopping at the grocery store after work, I literally ran into Amanda at the end of the cereal aisle, our carts colliding. "Are you happy now?" she hissed, her face contorted with anger. "The police came to Mom and Dad's. They took my laptop." "I didn't want any of this, Amanda," I said quietly. "I just wanted you to stop taking advantage of me. I'm your sister family. Help's family." "Help isn't the same as enabling," I replied, surprised at my own calmness. "You need real help, Amanda, for the gambling, for the financial issues." Her face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about. Tom told me everything. There are programs that can help you." For just a moment, something like fear or possibly recognition flickered in her eyes before the familiar mask of indignation returned. "Tom is a liar. And you're dead to me," she spat, before pushing her cart away, leaving a box of spilled cereal in her wake. Despite her harsh words, it was the most honest interaction we'd had in years. Easter Sunday arrived with deceptive brightness sunshine pouring through budding trees as I drove to my parents' home. My father had called the night before asking me to attend the family gathering. "Your mother has agreed not to discuss the situation," he promised. "Just come for dinner. It would mean a lot to me." Against my better judgment and my therapist's cautions about maintaining boundaries, I agreed. Family patterns are hard to break, and some part of me still longed for reconciliation, for a return to some idealized version of family that perhaps had never actually existed. I arrived intentionally late to minimize pre-dinner interaction, bringing a bouquet of spring flowers and a store-bought coconut cake that had been my grandmother's favorite since childhood. The atmosphere was tense, but superficially polite as we moved through the familiar rituals of the holiday meal. The facade cracked during dessert when Amanda tapped her water glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. "Since we're all together, I have some news," she announced, extending her left hand to reveal a diamond ring that caught the light. "Tom and I are engaged." Exclamations and congratulations erupted around the table. My mother looked genuinely happy for the first time in months. "We're thinking a December wedding," Amanda continued. "Something magical, with lots of snow and twinkling lights." "December is pretty soon to plan a wedding," my Aunt Susan observed. Amanda's smile tightened slightly. "Well, we have another reason to not wait too long." She placed a hand on her still flat stomach. "I'm pregnant. 8 weeks." Another round of excitement circled the table. I offered a polite congratulations, though my mind was spinning with concerns about her gambling, the timing, the financial implications for a woman already deeply in debt. "This calls for champagne," my father said, heading to the wine refrigerator. Sparkling cider for the mom-to-be, of course. As he poured drinks, my mother leaned over and squeezed Amanda's hand. "We have some news too, don't we, William?" My father's expression flickered with something I couldn't quite identify, reluctance, resignation before he nodded. "Your father and I have decided to help Amanda and Tom get started on the right foot," my mother announced proudly. "We're taking out a second mortgage to fund the fitness studio. With a baby coming, they'll need a solid business to support their family." The room fell silent as I processed this information. My parents in their late 50s were leveraging their home, their largest asset, and the cornerstone of their retirement security, to fund a business venture for my sister, who had no business experience and a gambling problem based on a business model with a high failure rate even for experienced operators. "Is that wise?" I asked carefully. "Second mortgages carry significant risks, and new businesses often take years to become profitable if they survive at all." Here we go, Amanda sighed dramatically. The financial lecture. It's not a lecture, I insisted. I'm concerned about Mom and Dad's retirement security. We've made our decision, my mother said firmly. Amanda has a family to think about now. Speaking of financial matters, my father interjected, his tone deliberately casual. We should probably discuss the police report situation. Now that there's a baby involved. Yes, my mother seized on the opening. Rebecca, you need to drop these charges. Your sister is about to be a mother. She can't have legal troubles hanging over her head. I looked around the table at my family, my mother's determined expression, my father's uncomfortable but acquiescent posture, Amanda's calculated display of vulnerability, my grandmother's worried face, my aunt's averted eyes. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what was happening. The pregnancy announcement, strategic timing, the second mortgage, it was all part of an orchestrated effort to deepen my parents' financial entanglement and pressure me into dropping the identity theft case. Have you already taken out the second mortgage? I asked my father directly. He hesitated. The paperwork is being processed. And how much equity are you taking out? That's none of your business, my mother interjected. It is, if I'm going to be expected to support you both when this business fails and your retirement savings are gone, I replied, surprised at my own directness. No one's asking you to support anyone, my mother snapped. Aren't you? Isn't that exactly what this family does? Create financial crises and then demand others fix them. How dare you, my mother gasped. Rebecca, my grandmother began, this is Easter Sunday. Let's not, I'd like to know something, I interrupted, turning to Amanda. Was the fitness studio ever real, or was it always just a cover for the gambling debts? The room went completely still. Amanda's face paled, then flushed with anger. You have no right to spread lies about me, she hissed. Tom told me everything, I said quietly. About Foxwoods, about the weekly trips, about how much you've lost. Tom is a liar, she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Should we call him right now and ask? That's enough, my mother interjected. Rebecca, if you can't be supportive, perhaps you shouldn't be here. I am being supportive, I countered. I'm trying to prevent Dad from losing his retirement and Amanda from digging a deeper hole. The only hole here is the one you're digging between yourself and this family, my mother said coldly. You have a choice to make right now, Rebecca. Either you drop these ridiculous charges against your sister and contribute the $15,000 she initially asked for to help with the business and baby expenses, or you're no longer welcome in this family. The ultimatum hung in the air like a physical thing. I looked at each face around the table, searching for an ally, finding none, except perhaps a flicker of something in my father's eyes that might have been regret. That's your definition of family, I asked finally. Unconditional giving with no boundaries, no matter how much harm it causes. It's called love, my mother replied. Something you seem incapable of. I stood, slowly placing my napkin beside my half-eaten cake. I've loved this family my entire life. I've worked to make you proud, to be responsible, to do the right thing. But I can't participate in this anymore. I walked to the sideboard where I'd placed my purse and removed a small box containing keepsakes. I'd brought my grandmother's recipe card for Christmas cookies, in her handwriting the key to my parents' house. I'd carried for 15 years a bracelet my mother had given me at 16. Placing the box on the table, I said I'm not giving anyone $15,000 to enable destructive behavior, and I'm not dropping the identity theft case. What Amanda did was illegal and serious. Then, you're no longer my daughter, my mother declared, her voice shaking with either rage or emotion, perhaps both. The words should have devastated me. Instead, they brought a strange clarity. I'll always be your daughter, Mom, but I won't be your ATM or your scapegoat anymore. I walked toward the door, pausing in the entryway when I heard footsteps behind me. It was my father, his eyes red-rimmed. "Rebecca," he said softly, glancing back toward the dining room. "This isn't what I wanted." "I know, Dad." He hugged me awkwardly, something we'd rarely done in recent years. "I'll call you," he whispered. As I drove away from my childhood home, tears finally came, not the desperate sobs of previous weeks, but a steady stream of grief for the family I'd thought I had, for the relationships that might never heal, for the years spent trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Yet beneath the grief was something unexpected: relief. The constant weight of unreasonable expectations and manipulation had lifted. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I was choosing myself without guilt or apology. Daniel called an hour later, having received my brief text about what happened. "You okay?" he asked simply. "No," I answered honestly. "But I think I'm going to be." We talked for hours, strategizing practical next steps, changing my phone number, adjusting privacy settings on social media, even considering a move to a new apartment building with better security. "They're going to escalate before they accept your boundaries," Daniel warned from his own experience with family estrangement. "Be prepared." His words would prove prophetic in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The morning after Easter, I began implementing the protective measures Daniel and I had discussed. I changed my phone number, created new email accounts, and tightened privacy settings on all social media platforms. I contacted my building manager to alert security about potential unwanted visitors, and began researching apartments in more secure buildings. These practical steps provided a framework for moving forward concrete actions that helped manage the emotional turmoil swirling beneath the surface. Dr. Mitchell, my therapist, had explained that establishing physical and digital boundaries was an essential first step in establishing psychological ones. The identity theft case proceeded, despite my mother's demands. Detective Rivera, assigned to my case, called with updates. "We have substantial evidence," she explained during our third conversation. "Digital forensics confirmed the loan applications were submitted from devices at your parents' address, and we've recovered deleted documents from your sister's laptop that include your personal information." "What happens next?" I asked, still conflicted about the potential consequences for Amanda. "That largely depends on the district attorney's office, but given the amount involved and the clear evidence, they'll likely pursue charges. Your sister might be offered a plea agreement, especially as a first-time offender." Within days of implementing my new boundaries, the retaliation began. Amanda created multiple fake social media accounts to bypass my blocks, sending messages that alternated between vicious accusations and tearful pleas about the baby. "You're destroying this family over money," read one message. "My baby will grow up never knowing her aunt because you're so selfish," claimed another. I documented each contact without responding, forwarding them to Detective Rivera and my attorney. My mother took a different approach, contacting friends and even distant acquaintances to rally them against me. I received bewildered texts from college friends I hadn't spoken with in years. "Your mom called me crying about you abandoning your pregnant sister. Is everything okay?" "Your mother contacted me asking me to reach out." The most painful discovery came when Megan gently informed me that my mother had called our workplace, asking to speak with my supervisor about concerns regarding her daughter's mental stability. Fortunately, the firm had strict privacy protocols and did not engage with her, but the knowledge that she would attempt to damage my professional reputation was a new kind of hurt. The campaign extended to community spaces as well. I stopped attending my church after learning my mother had spoken with the pastor about my unforgiving spirit, and avoided my favorite local coffee shop after spotting my mother deep in conversation with the owner I'd known for years. My world was shrinking spaces that had once felt safe, now potentially hostile. Yet alongside these losses, unexpected support emerged. Megan, initially just a work colleague, began inviting me to social gatherings with her friends. Daniel flew in from Chicago for a weekend, helping me research secure apartment buildings. My neighbor, Carlos, a cybersecurity expert, offered to check my laptop for spyware and strengthen my digital protections. 6 weeks after Easter, I was grocery shopping when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Rebecca, it's Tom. Amanda's ex-fiancé." Ex. He laughed humorlessly. "Yeah." Things ended after I discovered she'd taken out a credit card in my name. "Listen, I wanted to warn you. She's been talking about keying your car, something about teaching you a lesson." I thanked him for the warning, immediately adjusting my routine to park in more visible, well-lit areas. Despite these precautions, I returned from work 2 weeks later to find long, deep scratches along both sides of my car. A note under the windshield wiper read simply, "Family always wins." I reported the vandalism to the police, providing the note and pointing out the security cameras in the parking area. The footage clearly showed Amanda circling my car, knife in hand, methodically causing thousands of dollars in damage. This evidence, combined with the identity theft case, led to Amanda's arrest the following day. She was released on bail within hours, but the incident marked a turning point. The physical damage to property had crossed a line that even my mother couldn't easily dismiss. My father called that evening sounding exhausted. "Your mother is still defending her, saying the stress of the pregnancy made her do it. But I've had enough, Rebecca. I've consulted an attorney about protecting what's left of our finances. I'm sorry it's come to this, Dad. I am too. I've enabled this for too long trying to keep peace. But watching Amanda destroy your car, something you worked hard to earn while carrying my grandchild." His voice broke. "That's not how I raised my daughters to behave." His words touched something deep inside me, acknowledgement finally that what was happening wasn't normal or acceptable, that my boundaries weren't the problem. As summer arrived, I moved to a new apartment in a secure building with underground parking and 24-hour security. I changed my last name legally, not to hide, but to symbolize the fresh start I was creating. Rebecca Taylor became Becca Richards, a name I chose for its connection to my paternal grandmother's maiden name, honoring the branch of family that had shown me more respect. The process of legally changing my name felt significant beyond the practical aspect. Each document signed, each official notification sent represented another step toward defining myself on my own terms, rather than through family expectations. The most difficult letter to write was to my grandmother Helen. Despite her role in pressuring me, her love had always felt genuine, if sometimes misguided by outdated notions of family obligation. I explained my decision without accusation, including my new contact information should she wish to stay in touch. I didn't expect to hear back from her, which made the anonymous letter that arrived at my new address in September all the more surprising. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. "Dear Rebecca, I cannot call you by any other name. I don't agree with your decisions, but I respect your courage. Your grandfather would have said you have backbone. I am too old to change my ways of thinking, but not too old to recognize when someone stands firmly for their principles. If you ever wish to visit, you may call the landline. I have not shared your letter with anyone else. With love still, Grandma Helen." The brief message brought tears to my eyes. Not reconciliation exactly, but acknowledgement of my autonomy, which felt like a precious gift from her generation. As fall approached, I began to establish new rituals and connections to replace family traditions. Thanksgiving would be spent with Daniel's family in Chicago. Christmas plans included a volunteer shift at a local shelter, followed by dinner with Megan's extended family, who had warmly included me in previous gatherings. The legal consequences of Amanda's actions finally materialized in October. Faced with clear evidence in both the identity theft and vandalism cases, she accepted a plea agreement, no jail time, but restitution payments, probation, and mandatory financial counseling and gambling addiction treatment. My mother predictably called this outcome your sister being persecuted, but even she couldn't entirely dismiss the seriousness of the situation. For the first time, Amanda faced genuine consequences for her actions, consequences that might ultimately help her more than another bailout would have. 6 months after legally changing my name, I barely recognized my life. As Becca Richards, I had secured a new position at a different financial firm, one that valued my experience and ethical approach. My new apartment felt truly like home, decorated intentionally with items that brought me joy rather than family heirlooms weighted with complicated emotions. The process of healing wasn't linear. Some days brought surprising peace, while others ambushed me with grief for relationships I'd lost. Dr. Mitchell assured me this oscillation was normal part of integrating my experiences rather than simply trying to forget them. Estrangement isn't about pretending family doesn't exist, she explained during one session. It's about creating enough distance to develop a healthy sense of self outside toxic dynamics. This perspective helped me navigate the complicated emotions that arose as I established new boundaries. I no longer felt consumed by guilt when declining invitations to family events or when redirecting conversations away from family reconciliation well-meaning acquaintances occasionally suggested. The supportive community I'd gathered became a chosen family of sorts. Megan and I now shared weekly dinner nights, rotating cooking duties, and sometimes including others from our expanding circle. Daniel visited quarterly, his perspective, as someone who'd known me before and after estrangement invaluable in moments of doubt. My neighbor Carlos introduced me to a rock climbing gym where I discovered an unexpected passion for the sport and the mental clarity it brought. The physical challenge of scaling walls became a metaphor for the obstacles I was overcoming in my personal life, facing fears, finding new routes when old ones failed, trusting my own strength. On a crisp November evening, almost a year after the initial confrontation with my sister, I received a call from an unknown local number. Against my usual practice, something prompted me to answer. "Becca, it's your father." His voice, so familiar yet distant, sent a rush of conflicting emotions through me. "Dad, how did you get this number? Your grandmother." "Don't worry, she made me promise not to share it." He paused. "I'm not calling from home. I've left your mother, Becca." The news stunned me. My parents had been married for 35 years, their relationship a constant despite its dysfunctions. What happened? Many things building over time. But finding out she secretly remortgaged the house to pay Amanda's gambling debts after I explicitly refused, that was the final straw. We agreed to meet at a neutral cafe the following day. When I arrived, I barely recognized him. He seemed simultaneously older and somehow lighter, as though a physical weight had lifted. Over coffee, he shared the developments of recent months, how my mother had continued enabling Amanda despite the court-ordered treatment programs, how he'd discovered multiple loans taken out in his name, how he'd finally sought help from a financial counselor who helped him see the extent of the financial abuse. "I owe you an apology," he said, his hands cupped around his mug. "I failed you as a father by not standing up to these patterns years ago. I convinced myself I was keeping peace, but I was just avoiding conflict at your expense." His acknowledgement of his role in the family dysfunction meant more than I could express. Not because it vindicated me, but because it suggested he was beginning his own journey toward healthier relationships. "What happens now?" I asked. "I'm staying with my brother James temporarily. I've consulted a divorce attorney, and I'm seeing a therapist who specializes in codependency." He smiled slightly. "Something else we have in common now. We talked for nearly 3 hours, covering painful topics we'd never discussed directly before. The golden child divided by scapegoat dynamic that had shaped my childhood, the financial manipulation that had become our family's communication style, the genuine love that existed alongside these harmful patterns. "I'd like to be part of your life again," he said as we prepared to leave. "On whatever terms you're comfortable with. No pressure, no expectations." I agreed to monthly coffee meetings, a small step toward rebuilding a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. As we parted, he handed me an envelope. "Your grandmother asked me to give you this. She's been keeping it safe." Inside was a small sapphire ring. I recognized immediately my great-grandmother's, which had been promised to me on my 16th birthday, but somehow ended up on Amanda's finger instead after I left for college. "She found it in Amanda's things after the arrest and took it back," my father explained. "Said it was always meant for you." In December, news arrived via my father about Amanda. Her pregnancy had progressed normally, and she'd given birth to a healthy baby girl. More surprisingly, she was complying with her court-ordered financial counseling and attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings regularly. "The treatment seems to be helping," my father reported cautiously. "She's staying with your mother, who's watching the baby while Amanda works at a retail job. It's the longest she's held steady employment since high school." While I had no desire to reconnect with Amanda, I found myself hoping that motherhood and court-mandated therapy might help her find stability. The cycle of destructive behavior had hurt her too, even if she'd been unwilling to recognize it. My mother's situation had become precarious following my father's departure and the divorce proceedings. With limited income of her own and the house now in foreclosure, due to the defaulted second mortgage, she'd been forced to downsize dramatically. According to my father, she remained convinced that everyone else was to blame for her circumstances. "Some people never develop the capacity to examine their own behavior," Dr. Mitchell observed when I shared this update. "Your mother may be one of them." As the 1-year anniversary of my name change approached, I made a decision that surprised even me. I started an anonymous blog about financial abuse in families. Drawing on my professional expertise and personal experience, I created resources for others facing similar situations. The response was overwhelming. Comments and emails poured in from people who recognized their own family dynamics in my descriptions, who had never had words for the patterns they'd experienced. Many expressed gratitude for the practical financial protection strategies I outlined, information that wasn't readily available elsewhere. This unexpected platform became another piece of my healing journey. By transforming my painful experiences into resources that helped others, I reclaimed power from a situation that had once left me feeling powerless. In January, I began volunteering at a women's financial literacy program, teaching basic principles of money management and boundary setting. The work was deeply fulfilling, particularly when participants shared their own stories of financial manipulation and the steps they were taking to protect themselves. As winter thawed into spring, my new life felt increasingly solid, built on foundations of my own choosing rather than family expectations. I had created meaningful work, genuine friendships, and healthy boundaries achievements that seemed impossible during those dark days a year earlier. On a sunny April afternoon, I returned home to find a letter in my mailbox, handwritten on pale blue stationery I immediately recognized. My grandmother Helen had found me again. Opening it with trembling fingers, I read, "My dear Rebecca, or Becca if you prefer now, at 82 I've lived long enough to see that family can be both our greatest comfort and our greatest wound. I was raised to believe that family loyalty trumps all else, but watching what happened to you has forced me to question that belief. Your mother remains unchanged, but I want you to know that your courage has affected others. Your father seems happier than I've seen him in decades. And even Amanda, though, she would never admit it, has shown small signs of growth since facing real consequences. None of this justifies what was done to you, but perhaps it offers some confirmation that choosing yourself was not only necessary for you, but ultimately better for everyone. I hope someday to meet the woman you are becoming, free from the burdens unfairly placed on you. With love and newfound respect, Grandma Helen. Tears streamed down my face as I read her words, not from grief this time, but from the profound relief of being truly seen by someone who had known me my entire life. When my sister demanded $15,000 and my mother told me to pay up or lose my family, they never expected I would choose myself. They never imagined that in losing what I thought was everything, I would find what I'd been searching for, all along the unshakable knowledge that I am enough exactly as I am. Thank you for watching my story. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members over money issues? How did you handle it? Please share your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most necessary healing. Wishing you strength on your own journey to healthy relationships.